Ron's motto at the camp is God first, others second, me last. In his remarks last night, Jack Connors alluded that Ron was living Jesus' words, I came to serve, not to be served. I fervently believe that my coaches, teachers, the Watertown School administrators espoused these very same values and imparted these values to me and to all their charges. They came to serve, not to be served. They imparted peace, love, humility, and patience. They lived the adage, God first, others second, themselves last. My coaches in particular were significant role models for me. They were my advisors, my mentors. They inspired me to be the best that I could be. They pushed me to set goals that would continually exceed my expectations. They taught me the value of persistence, hard work, of teamwork, and loyalty. They were clearly dedicated to serving, not being served. They constantly demonstrated peace, love, humility, and patience. And believe me, their patience was strained by the performance of the 1958 football team, as Bob talked about. We won our first game. When Bob talked about Matignon, Artie Graham became a dear friend of mine, and to this day he won't accept that we beat them in that game. And he can almost remember every play. Well, as it was said earlier, that's when I met Frank Solito, a giant of a man, not in stature, but in heart. Frank was my line coach. Coach Solito, in particular, continued to make an impact on my life after Watertown High School. It was he who was instrumental in making me believe that I could play football at Boston College. It was he, long after I graduated, who would, every Saturday morning, put me through my paces in 3-hour cutthroat handball. I see Bobby Caponana laughing. Actually, Bobby was there too. Frank used to beat us, he against the both of us. It's interesting to observe that over 20% of the current 43 members of the Watertown High School Athletic Hall of Fame are or were coaches at Watertown High School. I was privileged to have played for a number of these coaches. Coach Palladino, Dupree, Gleason, Yankowski, Cousineau, and the ubiquitous Nick Pappas was always there, all of whom have achieved this highest form of recognition of the Hall. I am also very proud to be joining my late great uncle, Joe Hyde, class of 1917, who is already a member of the Hall of Fame. I'd like to share a Coach Dupree story with you. We used to play our hockey games at the Boston Arena near Northeastern. Late in one game, I was involved in a collision at the blue line. My first memory after that collision was Coach Dupree out on the ice, peering into my eyes. I said, "Coach, I'm okay," and I started to get up. He said, "Just lie there a minute." I said, "No, really, Coach, I'm okay." And again, I started to get up. With that, I felt his strong, restraining hand on my chest, and he bent over and he whispered, so as not to be heard by the refs and the other players milling around. I said, "Stay there. The team needs the rest." Needless to say, I obeyed. Out came the stretcher to take off the wounded gladiator. as the team got their much-needed rest. Unfortunately, my parents were not as privileged to hear my conversation with my coach, and therefore spent a few anxious moments. When they took me off on the stretcher, my parents were in the stand. They came around the corner to the dressing room. I was going in on the stretcher, followed by a priest. It worked out okay. My next recollection is the beginning of my football career. As Bob again said, stealing my speech, the 1957 Watertown High School football team had been an excellent football team. They had, my recollection, the heaviest line in the state, terrific football players, anchored by Ron Testa and Dom Antonellis, who averaged over 250 pounds. In fact, Dom, who has become a dear friend and played with me at BC, is here this evening. And Dominic, thank you very much for graduating. However, with the departure of these large gladiators, Coach Palladino was roaming the hall looking for a few good men. He gave up on that, and then he started to look for a few big men. Then he gave up on that, and he started to look for any men to replace all of those graduates. Johnny Carver had been approached by Vic Palladino. I independently had been approached by Vic Palladino as well as by Frank Solito. Johnny and I compared notes. I said, well, John, if you go out, I'll go out. John said, well, if you go out, I'll go out. Neither one of us thought the other would go out, and I thanked Johnny for the start of my football career. We both went out. And that led to 4 years of football at Boston College, followed by a 6-year professional career. Since retiring from football in 1958, I've enjoyed a long and rewarding professional career and have derived a great deal of satisfaction in devoting my time and energy to a variety of charitable causes. I'll leave you with another stretcher story that marked the end of my career. At the time I was playing with the St. Louis Cardinals. We were in Washington, D.C., playing the Washington Redskins. And back in the dark ages, 1967, they would have nationally televised NFL games from time to time during the season. This happened to be one of those games. Well, I got hurt quite badly on the opening kickoff of the game, and it delayed the start of the game about 15 or 20 minutes because I was in the middle of the field. That incident ended again with them taking me off the field on a stretcher, and ultimately was the end of my professional career. I was in the hospital for quite a period of time after that and needed some reconstructive surgery. When I got out of the hospital and I was back in the training room, the assistant trainer came up and said, gee, Dave, I want to thank you very much for breaking your leg like that in Washington. And I said, well, you're welcome, but why? He said, you know, I got more letters, more telephone calls, more postcards from my friends all over the country. I was on national TV for 10 minutes. I said, well, I was glad that I could oblige. But enough about these vignettes. Before I conclude tonight, I want to acknowledge my wonderful parents who, as much or more than anyone, were the givers, not the takers. My parents epitomized the virtues of peace, love, humility, and patience, which was particularly difficult with 3 boys. They always looked to serve rather than be served. It was these values that I have tried to successfully, I hope, live up to, and instill in my sons who are here with me tonight, and I would like to recognize them and have them stand. My son Sean. Sean has completed 2 years of a 4-year PhD program in clinical psychology at the University of Hartford. Not bad, huh? And my son Brendan. Brendan has completed his freshman year at Rollins College. I'd also like to introduce my brother Jack, from whom I learned so much about fair play and loyalty. Jack? And last but not least, this isn't in my notes, but when I arrived tonight, I expected to have my family here to share this evening with me, and unbeknownst to me, there are about 50 of my friends who have taken the time to come and support me this evening, and I want to thank them for their efforts, and I want to thank Judy Boudreau, who put this all together with none of my personal knowledge. Thank you very much. In closing, I would just like you to know how deeply moved by the events of this evening I am, and